everybody, to the Old Time Boxing Show on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. The Old Time Boxing Show is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation with Alex Ramos and Jackie Richardson. Make sure you go check them out on Facebook. I am your host for the Old Time Boxing Show, Mike Goodpaster. Let me welcome in our resident boxing historian, Christopher Shelton. How you doing, Christopher?
Good. It's going to be an interesting interview. Last week we did someone who gives 100% every single time he goes out in the ring. And now we're doing someone who doesn't give 100% every time he goes out in the ring. So,
all right.
Interesting.
Ray Mercer, if he's listening to the show, is probably already pumped up to hear this. All right. So we're going to talk about merciless Ray Mercer today, who was a guy when at his best could hang with anybody. But as Chris said, sometimes he wasn't always at his best. Now, Mercer played linebacker in high school, didn't plan to go to college for an education. He ended up entering the Army, and we've heard this before, whether it was Mike Weaver or whoever, about how they go into the Army, become boxers, and he started boxing at the age of 23 while serving in the U.S. Army in West Germany, Chris.
Yeah, and the Army got a big, strong guy, because if this guy could hang with the best heavyweights, he could certainly hang with the best Army personnel.
You would hope, but, and then he ends up...
That's just it felt. The guy could hit hard, granite jaw, strong, physical guy.
Yeah, and the first time he ever put on boxing gloves was not until he got into the Army, and he had, in a short 4 or 5 year span, a really good career, won the U.S. National Amateur Championships, and then he goes to the Olympics in 1988 in Seoul, South Korea. And the way he got away from the bad decision was, he knocked out Bak Hong Man from South Korea in the first round. And when you look at the names...
And that is a crisis distance, yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the competition, it wasn't great. He beat a guy from Czechoslovakia, Italy, the Netherlands, and South Korea to win the heavyweight championship, or the gold medal. But the one that stood out to me here was in the Olympic trials, where he beat Tommy the Duke Morrison by unanimous decision. And then in the finals, he beat Michael Bent, who is one of my favorite interviews I ever did. Michael Bent, of course, won a portion of the heavyweight championship, the WBO version, beating Tommy Morrison. And I know when I interviewed Bent, he still swears that he beat Ray Mercer. And I know it was a 3-2 split decision, Chris.
Well, Mercer also, it's written down in Cuba that they didn't want Mercer facing Felix Savon. They're a great heavyweight that would always say, how would he do against, these pros and stuff? And we know he's a great amateur fighter, but at least in the written reports, Cuba wasn't too interested in having Savon take on Mercer. And certainly when I could see Mercer in the Olympics, I mean, this guy's a hard hitter. I mean, he's formish, I guess is to use the words. But, yeah, none of his 4 opponents went distance, a couple first-round knockouts. I mean, that's the way we do it in America, baby. Yeah, Ray Mercer was incredible, merciless to his opponents.
Yeah, and you talk about Felix Savon, he fought Savon in a dual meet in Atlantic City in April of that year, 1988, and he lost a split decision to Savon, but I know that decision was kind of... maybe bogus, but it was in America. So.
Absolutely could be. Absolutely could be bogus because dealing with Mercer here, I see a lot of strange judging results, which you kind of expect that in boxing. So certainly anything involving, I hate to say this, the Cuba, their officiating, I mean, it leaves a suspect, which I guess is why you said Mercer thought maybe in the Olympics, I better go for knockouts and not leave it in the judges' hands, which is probably a good idea.
Yeah, and he comes out of the Olympics as an Olympic gold medalist. He was older than your normal gold medalist, so they were, of course, going to rush him to a title shot. And he was approached by Bob Arum, who he signed a contract with to turn professionally. Under the deal, he was trained in Las Vegas, Nevada, under Hank Johnson, who was the Fort Bragg All-Army coach and an assistant Olympic coach. And under that deal, Arum got the rights to promote a certain amount of televised bouts, leaving the boxer free to fight for others. And upon winning the 88 Olympics, he was honorably discharged in January of 89 and left to start up his pro career.
Yeah, I think he also is a U.S. Armed Forces Athlete of the Year after the Olympic performance. So that's an incredible honor. I mean, consider they're all our military branches and all the different athletic sports, and to be number one, that's a real honor.
Now, his career started off with your normal Gehring Lanes and Tracy Thomases, guys that are 500 or maybe a little bit better. And his career really heated up. He started fighting a little bit better guys. Jerry Jones was a guy who, in I think around this time, upset Michael Bent. Michael Bent's pro debut, he lost to Jerry Jones. He was knocked out in like the second round, and Jones took Mercer 12 rounds. And then after that, and this was probably the first time I noticed Mercer, was he fought on the undercard to Uno Moss, the Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard third fight. He fought Ozzy Ocasio, who was a former cruiserweight champion who'd fought for the heavyweight title against Larry Holmes back, I think, in 1979. And this was a fight that was highly disputed, and a lot of people thought Ocasio beat him, Chris.
Well, I really am okay with the split decision. Ocasio's on my bad list because this is after he fought Callie Dwight Braxton and just ran around the ring and wouldn't fight and got the decision. But even in this fight against Mercer, Mills Lane is the referee. Mills Lane's telling Ocasio, hey, start fighting. Come on, start fighting. It's really sort of aggravating. It's not quite as bad this time around, but I'd hate to have Mercer take his first loss, an Olympic athlete, to a guy who's just running around. I understand boxing, and I Ozzy Ocasio is a terrific boxer, but there's still a difference between boxing and not fighting. And so I think it's a very interesting contrast component for Mercer to take, maybe one that's, you don't know it's going to go your way if it's just, pure boxing. But I'm okay with the split decision. I think that gives Mercer a warning to be careful with boxers. I don't think he listened to that warning. And also, I think Ocasio does deserve to have, a little bit of not giving it to him. If he's not fighting, if he's just boxing, okay, that's fine. But start fighting, dude. So I would hate to have Mercer taken away, given his first defeat on something like that. So
yeah,
I'm okay.
I think Mercer won the fight too. I think that was one of those situations like the Ali Doug Jones or the Holmes Witherspoon where people didn't expect anything, and when they see something, they tend to overreact to it, if you know what I mean.
But I also think that you're right. I also think that at least Doug Jones, he nailed, the play in the first, round.
Yeah, he threw
really
punches at least.
I don't think Ocasio really landed a solid punch level. I certainly didn't hurt Mercer, but I don't even think he really landed anything solid. I think it was just sort of a technicality thing of Mercer for having a little trouble hitting him and such. And I do agree that, Casey is going to probably look good, especially against Mercer. But I just don't see the bandwagon of saying, this would be Mercer's first loss. I'm completely okay about the decision.
Yeah. And then he beats Wesley Watson. That's one of the guys everybody beats. Camille Odom, who at times looked like a decent fighter, and Odom actually went the distance with him. He beats Lionel Washington, and then he fights Burt Cooper for the NABF title, and this is basically to get a title shot. As I said, they were rushing him along because of his advanced age. I mean, he wasn't 50. But for a heavyweight starting out, he was getting up there, and he was a banger. And he fought Smokin' Burt Cooper for the NABF for heavyweight title at the Convention Center in Atlantic City, and pretty much dominated Cooper.
Well, I thought it was a hell of a fight. The first round, he knocks down Cooper, so you're not sure what you're getting. But for 12 rounds, that is solid slugging. I mean,
there is no easy Burt Cooper fight.
Oh, no, and I think, eventually when Burt Cooper fought Evander Holyfield, they're kind of calling him a journeyman and stuff like that. I think sometimes these second-tier boxers are given phrases that make them look less than they really are. Because you're right, Burt Cooper is a hard puncher, a hard-working guy, and he and Ray Mercer, after that first knockdown, they really just land punches after punches after punches. It went the right way. Mercer deserved the decision, but Burt Cooper deserves all the credit in the world for putting out a slugfest where, they both, you'd think, have headaches for days afterwards. And the audience wants to YouTube, that would be one to YouTube if you just want to watch two guys slugging it out for 12 rounds. It's kind of unusual for Mercer to take 12-round bouts, but he did, and it's a good one.
All right. Then next up, he got a shot at the made-up WBO heavyweight title that Francesco Damiani had at the time. Of course, Damiani was one of the stars at 1984 for the Italian Olympic team. Did he win gold or say he was the gold medalist there, silver medalist? He lost to Biggs, didn't he?
Yeah, he was. I believe he was silver, and then he ran his pro career undefeated. So the problem, I guess,
the undefeated pro career is an issue though, because he didn't
in the
really,
title thing. Yeah,
I mean, he fought Donnie Long, Rocky Sikorsky, Rick Keller, the guys everybody beats. He beat James Broad, who it took him the distance to beat. He beat Eddie Richardson, who took him the distance. Anders Eklund, who was the guy, if you remember watching, what was the name of that movie? The Great White Hype. And they keep showing the black dude, which was Tim Witherspoon, knocking the white dude out. It was Anders Eklund. Then they got a rematch with Tyrell Biggs, who he beats Biggs. That's after, Tyson and cocaine had already ruined Biggs. And then the reason he became the WBO heavyweight champion of the world is because he beat Johnny Duploy. Johnny Duploy was a South African heavyweight who, to call him nondescript, may be overranking him. So he gets the title, and then he defends it against Daniel Eduardo Neto, another stud. And then he fights merciless Ray Mercer, and this was a fight that was actually pay-per-view because, if I remember right, on the undercard, I think the undercard was Bruce Seldon against somebody, but I don't remember who it was, and it was Tommy Morrison, I think, against, was it Pinklon Thomas or one of those guys? James Quick Tillis.
Well, it was sort of
James Quick Tillis, was who he fought.
The WBO was sort of just a just recently invented letter title, but Damiani, even though he's undefeated, his alter ego undefeated is Vander Holyfield, and there's just no way anybody thought they were equals. So Damiani just didn't really have the respect, and that title ultimately doesn't hold much respect because usually when you refer to Ray Mercer, you would say the best 90s heavyweight who didn't fight for the title. So that WBO, while Mercer won, and he won a very, very unusual fight, Damiani surprised everybody, including he fought great. Damiani looked like a terrific boxer. He's not bicycling like a Ocasio. I mean, he's landing jabs. He's a smart fighter. He won 8.5 rounds. He sort of was shutting out Mercer, and then Mercer lands. It didn't even look like at first Mercer hit him, but he did. He flicked, just kind of got the tip of his nose or just part of his face in the nose, and Damiani was flat out. Damiani, I think, impressed people in defeat, and Mercer now had a title WBO, and then it's up to the people of whether they think that's a championship quality title or not. And I have a feeling, in sort of retrospect, people don't think so. But Mercer, it's a great knockout, but probably a really disappointing fight. And Damiani, maybe defeat, showed that, at least to Americans, he wasn't a chump. He was a good boxer. He just doesn't deserve to be called
I think he was a guy where his style was more geared towards amateur boxing, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And again, he's a terrific boxer. He's not. Casey is a terrific boxer, but I see a frustrating, terrific boxer. Well, Damiani is boxing, but he's also engaging. And so I give credit to Damiani that he sort of won American respect in defeat. And for Mercer, it's a knockout, but it should have been more of a warning to Mercer that you're not always going to be able to pull it out of a hat, like that, and that if a guy like Damiani, these other boxers are going to watch that fight, they're going to possibly learn, and it was probably a more dangerous defeat than Mercer would acknowledge, because Mercer sort of, well, it worked out, I knocked the guy out. I was supposed to knock him out. I knocked him out. Maybe it took longer than some people thought. I don't know. I don't care. I knocked him out, and I'm still undefeated, and life is great.
Yeah, and the problem was it happened again right after that. He fights Tommy the Duke Morrison. Tommy Morrison was beating his ass pretty good those first 3 rounds, and then Mercer catches him. One of the most devastating knockouts I think we've ever seen. And I think it set him up for what came later in his career, especially in the very next fight where he fought a guy you can't knock out. And I think the problem with Morrison was Morrison went out and hit Mercer with shots that would have knocked probably 99% of all heavyweights that ever lived out.
Great.
And he just stood there and looked at him.
And that also had to be get in your head if you're a boxer, what you'd be facing in Mercer, because Tommy Morrison's left hook, they are solid shots, and Mercer is taking those punches. And if he could take those punches from Tommy Morrison, he's going to be able to take punches from almost anybody. So if you're going to beat him, if you're a thinking person, it wasn't going to be necessarily slugging it out with him early, the Burt Cooper approach. It's fun for the fans, but yeah, Morrison also, obviously gassed himself out a little bit after the third round. Mercer had a better fourth round, and then when Mercer closed in for the kill, Morrison pinned to the corner ropes. It's horrific to watch because he clearly has Morrison knocked out after about the fifth solid blow, and then Morrison is sort of trapped or sort of there, and Mercer's still pummeling him. I mean, Tommy Morrison's acting minutes after the fight. He's ready to go. He's ready to keep on fighting. It's like, dude, the fight ended 10 minutes ago. It's over. But that's it. Also, is incredible because Mercer will have a little bit on the highlight tapes, which usually feature knockouts, and that's one of them, but not his only one. These spectacular knockouts that you go, ooh, like Evel Knievel smashing all over the asphalt. And that was one of them. That was an incredible knockout, and again, it showed everybody that he could really take a left hook. He could really take a punch, and that was impressive.
Yeah, and then just 4 months later, he fights Larry Holmes. My problem with that is this. He won the WBO heavyweight title. The number one contender was Michael Moore. Mercer decided to relinquish the title and fight Holmes instead of the number one contender, Michael Moore. Mercer was a 4-1 favorite. And this, to me, may have been what I think there's no doubt, it was one of Larry Holmes' greatest performances at the age of 42 to be able to dominate this young guy like that.
It was a spectacular performance by Holmes. It really messed up a lot of different, scenarios and legacies, but, good for Holmes. He has a right to go out there and do his thing. He got away a little bit of, holding onto the ropes and such, but he was giving he's going to hang in there as a boxer and as a fan non-favorite. Ray Mercer has the crowd in the beginning. Ray Mercer's always a fan favorite. The crowd loves Ray Mercer. But Holmes started turning people around because he's hanging in there. And he's not making it easy for Mercer. And that as the fight's progressing, Mercer, I wouldn't say necessarily is getting frustrated, but it looks less and less like he can really do anything to knock out Holmes, while Holmes is clearly getting his energy and is getting re-geared and excited and such. So Mercer is gone from somebody who thinks he's going to fight Mike Tyson or he's going to fight Riddick Bowe for the title and such, and these things get all messed up, or he's going to fight Evander Holyfield. So everybody's legacy gets messed up with Larry Holmes, because now Larry Holmes, after beating Mercer, now he gets to fight Evander Holyfield. Well, that hurts Evander Holyfield's legacy because he's just fought Foreman. So at that moment, it looks like, well, Holyfield's just taking on these old guys. He's not really fighting anybody, but he kind of almost has to give Holmes this opportunity. And Holmes actually fought halfway decent against Holyfield. That would be a great time for a Mercer-Holyfield fight, but Mercer messed it up by Holmes winning, and Holmes, to his credit, you got to give it to the guy that won. So eventually, these Mercer, when he doesn't come in or doesn't look his best, and he didn't look his best, he comes in heavier than usual, and that's one of the key signs is with Ray Mercer's. You have an idea where his head is at just on the way-in, almost more than any heavyweight that I can think of, because just hearing his weight, you go, oh, okay, well, he's in shape for this one. He's not in shape for this one. He's not ready for this one. And Larry Holmes, just did a spectacular job of boxing. And I'm just seeing Holmes engage, the enthusiasm from Larry Holmes was terrific. And seeing the fans, he was bringing the fans to like him for once by showing, by getting them on his side. And he almost acted like he didn't care. Like he always said, I don't care what the fans think. But this time the fans were like, you know what? This old guy, he's giving this young guy, Mercer's not that young, a real boxing lesson. And it was nice to see that for Larry Holmes, and that he won. He deserved his shot against Evander Holyfield, though Mercer or Holyfield would have been better for Holyfield. It would have been better for boxing, but it is what it is.
And they ended up fighting anyways, and it was good for boxing when they did. All right, and you talked about the weight. And, he wins a few nondescript fights, and then he fights Jesse Ferguson. Mercer had been promised a title shot against Riddick Bowe, guaranteed a $1.5 million payday if he beat Ferguson. However, things didn't go the way that Mercer wanted. He came into the fight at 238. That's 23 pounds more than what he weighed when he fought Francesco Damiani. And the thing that's funny about this, Mercer repeatedly offers Jesse Ferguson a $100,000 bribe to go down both before and during the fight, which Ferguson refused according to the testimony under oath in court. And this bout led to charges of sports bribery being filed against Ray Mercer by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office.
Right. Jesse Ferguson's probably the biggest claim to fame earlier is before Tillis went the distance with Tyson. Ferguson had gone farther than anyone, eventually disqualified for holding. But Ferguson was a professional sparring partner. That's what he called himself. He had lost, I think, 9 of his previous 15 fights. But he's a very good, very smart guy, and I sort of understood his place. And he knew his place was to sort of lose. But he did just really boxing mechanics, sort of, Mercer gave him the body to hit, so Ferguson hit the body and kept hitting the body early on, winning the rounds too because Mercer just wasn't doing much. And then by the 5th, 6th round, the commentators were sort of joking. If Ferguson would have thought he had a shot, he would have come in better shape himself. But Ferguson's just doing kind of basic things. He's looking at the chest and then popping him to the chin, and he's working. And by the 5th, 6th round, Ferguson's won every single round after 6 rounds, and all of a sudden Mercer's going to have to win by knockout. And meanwhile, all those body shots that Ferguson had landed on him had taken away Mercer's power. Mercer's in trouble, and clearly when he comes out, there's a sad look on Mercer's face as he's talking to Ferguson, and you can't help but think he's saying to sort of take a dive, take a dump, and you can tell that Ferguson is kind of listening and puzzles himself of what to do, and Ferguson ultimately decides he's going to finish it out. It's kind of interesting too. By the 9th round or so, when Ferguson clearly knows he's going to win, George Foreman refers to a sadness in Jesse Ferguson's heart because now he realizes he may have blown it as being a professional sparring partner. He may have blown what basically he does for his job, but he goes for the win. Good for him, and gets a title opportunity, which didn't last very well with Riddick Bowe. But again, by Mercer
more than
not
$100,000.
But Mercer not really coming into shape also then hurts Riddick Bowe's legacy because Riddick Bowe, you sort of fault him at this point. You're taking on a professional sparring partner, 19-9, second round knockout. It doesn't really look good for Riddick Bowe, but it's not Bowe's fault. Bowe's got Brock Newman practically in that camp saying, what the hell's going on with Mercer? Why is Ferguson beating him? It almost looks like he's instigating the bribe himself because he's so proactive in Mercer's corner. And so it's not that Riddick Bowe really wanted to face a Jesse Ferguson that beats Mercer. He'd rather face Mercer because, it's a better fight and more money and such. But again, it is what it is. Jesse Ferguson just does a terrific job showing you as a second-tier kind of guy that he can still box, and that Ray Mercer, for the second time in a row, Larry Holmes and now Ferguson, he's set up for a championship fight, and he's blown it. And he's blown it really on it's his own fault. It's not just the opponent doing well against him. He himself wasn't really ready for these fights.
All right, and then things get even weirder. He actually gets his weight down to 223, rematches with Ferguson, and wins a disputed split decision.
That was real close, too. In fact, I could almost see giving Ferguson the decision, though I will say in the final 3 rounds, it looks as though Ferguson is something sort of gone. I don't know what it is or why, but it looks like Ferguson doesn't quite have that will or that desire to go after Mercer. So you can almost give Mercer the final 3 rounds. That makes it a more palatable sort of a win for Mercer, but it's a darn close one. I probably still would have given it to Ferguson, but it's okay. It's good for boxing when all said and done. Jesse Ferguson had his moment, and I think it's not an outrageous decision for Mercer against Ferguson.
Yeah, and then Mercer puts on 20 pounds, weighs in at 246, fights a draw with Marion Wilson, who I think most people thought Wilson won.
Absolutely humiliating, embarrassing fight for boxing. Marion Wilson's the guy who's mostly known for not getting knocked out. He loses his fight. He
was 7-9 going into the fight.
7-9 with 2 draws, seven wins in 18 contests. And he dominates Ray Mercer. I mean, this is not – at least the second fight with Ferguson, I could say, well, it's sort of close. I think I might have given it to Ferguson. This isn't close. Marion Wilson probably wins 9, 10. He probably wins every round. This is an embarrassment for boxing, that decision. It's just disgusting. It's disgusting the shape that Mercer brought himself in. And you know the amazing thing is, and it works on people like me, I still like Ray Mercer. I was a fan. Lots of people still like Ray Mercer. We believed he was trying to put out a bribe to Jesse Ferguson in that first fight. That would almost turn against anybody. I don't know about what about Ray Mercer's charm. I don't even know if it's charm, but there's something likable enough that we forgive him and forgive him and forgive him. Man, this should have been it. At this point, I can understand saying, forget Ray Mercer. He's a journeyman. He doesn't deserve another opportunity in life. But thank goodness that's not the way it worked out. That Ray Mercer had another plan, and this time, he would put himself back out there and put up some great fights, or we wouldn't be doing this show right now. But after that, Marion Williams.
And the next two fights, he's 22 pounds less when he fights Evander Holyfield. He took 10 months off. Holyfield also was coming back from, kind of an abyss. Both of these guys were trying to prove themselves. Yeah, both these guys were trying to prove themselves. And this was a spectacular comeback for Holyfield. It was a spectacular comeback for both fighters.
It was great for boxing. This is almost like you feel like a heavyweight championship fight, even if it's not technically. And they fought like champions. After 7 rounds, Mercer is getting the best of Holyfield. And this isn't because Holyfield's heart problems. It's just Mercer's. He's well prepared. He's well matched. He is boxing a little bit better. It's sort of frustrating. A person of Mercer's caliber having so little boxing skills, but he is moving around a little bit better. He is showing more boxing skills. And after 7 rounds, I think he's leading in a close fight. And then Evander Holyfield knocks Mercer down late. Actually, it looks like Mercer almost takes a knee at the end of the 8th round, but that's a 10-8 round for Holyfield. And then the next 2 rounds, I'd give them both to Holyfield. And in a very close decision, it went to Evander Holyfield. I think without question, should go to Evander Holyfield. Mercer deserves all the credit in the world. Ray Mercer put up a hell of a fight. That is a great fight. Thank you, Ray Mercer. But I think it should go to Holyfield, but Mercer looked crushed. He looked like he felt he had been ripped off by the judges. I just don't see that. But I do think that was terrific for boxing, and that's what boxing needed at that moment. It was a great heavyweight championship fight. And I also admire Ray Mercer, who keeps saying, I want Lennox Lewis. I want Lennox Lewis. When you have guys like Bo or Tyson who are being questioned that they don't want to fight Lewis, we don't think they really want to fight Lewis. Ray Mercer's like, I want to fight Lennox Lewis. I want to fight Lennox Lewis. So I give the man, credit for his gumption.
Yeah, and he gets to fight Lennox Lewis a year later. He actually gained 15 pounds and weighed in almost 240. But this is a fight, I really think Ray Mercer won this fight.
I think it's really close. I think that it's frustrating for Ray Mercer to take a loss on that one, because at least with Holyfield, whatever the rounds you give Holyfield, those are hard-fought, earned rounds by Holyfield. I think what's frustrating when I watch the Lennox Lewis fight is that I think I'm only okay about the decision in a technical sense. Not really sort of because every round is being given this 10-9, and I'm not sure they all deserve to have that kind of power, because there's a couple rounds where they're sort of resting, and neither one's doing a whole lot. But then Lewis, just toward the last 30 seconds, throws out a couple little, this or that boxing stuff, really boring boxing stuff, really stuff that has no effect on Mercer at all. And then it's a matter of, do you call that a 10-9 round or a 9-9 round? And I almost think that they should rethink whether to give those 10-9 rounds to Lewis, because he's got like at least three of those, and that was all the difference. Just one of them would have made the difference. So if Lewis beat Mercer, it was on the piddly rounds, not the hard-fought rounds, and the decision to give a 10-9 rounds to Lewis, that I don't think it was outrageous to call them 9-9 rounds and say, these are basically draws. And if they had done that, Ray Mercer would have won deservedly. And I think you can watch the overall fight and say Ray Mercer won this fight. It's only when you go to the technicalities of giving every round the same amount of power, the same amount of that's the only technical reason to give anything to Lewis. But how disappointing that Lennox Lewis is fighting like a piddly little boxer, as big and strong as he is, while Ray Mercer's going out there like how we think a heavyweight should be going out there, throwing hard punches. Lewis wasn't afraid. It's just not an admirable way to win, though I guess a win's a win. And it is very discouraging that Ray Mercer took the loss. And I can see people being pissed off about it, because there's something wrong about watching an overall fight and saying, I think Ray Mercer won this fight, versus going piddly round by round and giving Lennox Lewis the cheapest of the rounds all went to him.
All right, and then 7 months later, he fights Tim Witherspoon. This is actually a fight that I think Mercer won relatively easy on rounds, but every round was pretty close here. Witherspoon was ready to fight this night. This is a good, solid fight, and
Yeah.
Ray Mercer gets the win. And with those three fights, you would think that he's back on track, but he really wasn't.
No, it's really amazing also because it is a good fight, Witherspoon versus Mercer. Both of them, it appears in the decline. They're a little bit older, but they stay within a relatively small center ring, throwing punches, hard punches throughout the fight. And, I'm glad, I can understand actually if some people even thought I should go Witherspoon's way. I'm okay totally to go Mercer's way. Mercer actually hadn't won a fight like in 3 years or something. It seems incredible because he fought so well against Holyfield, so well against Lewis, that after that Witherspoon fight, you think, he's had a pretty good 3-year run, even though he's not really winning, and that a lot of his legacy is built on those couple losses against Holyfield and Lewis. But at this point, Mercer after Witherspoon could be proud of where he's at, that he had fought the best, and some people think he should go his way. And but either way, I think that's why I wanted to do the show. He was so great against Holyfield. He was so great against Lewis. I certainly think the Lewis fight can go either way, depending on how you judge these things. And it's just an incredible comeback story from a guy who deservedly, deserves a little bit of scorn for weight issues and possibly a bribe situation. But he remained a fan favorite. I'm kind of glad because I still like Ray Mercer and still hope the best. And it was nice that he had this for his legacy, and yet it wasn't going to be completely the end.
Yeah, and you talk it wasn't the end. He didn't fight in '97, though. In 1998, he fought once against Lee Loianco. In 1999, he fought once against Jimmy Haynes. Didn't fight at all in 2000. 2001, he sets himself up a title shot somehow by beating Jeff Pegues. I don't know what the hell that is. Don Steele.
He knocked him out of the ring. And then he knocked Don Steele out. He had back-to-back fights where he knocked the person out of the ring. He took the Pegues and knocked him out of the ring for the knockout. And the next fight against Don Steele, this Don Steele, poor guy, he can't get anything going because every time Mercer hits him with a jab, the guy goes bouncing backwards. And finally, Mercer hits him with a body shot, sends him out of the ring, splattering onto the floor. The two back-to-back knockouts out of the ring show that when you see these big guys that are 6'3" and their record's 14-1, they can't be stiffs. Ray Mercer treated them like stiffs, even though they were stiffs in a way. But it also shows, again, the admiration that I have for a Jesse Ferguson or a Marion Wilson, or we call them journeymen, or a Burt Cooper. No, those guys are good fighters, too. They're just not at the level of some of these other ones. But certainly the guys that Mercer was now knocking him into another planet, knocking him out of the ring, they're fun fights to see Mercer do that and remind you of Mercer's punching power. But yeah, these guys were not at the level of Jesse Ferguson and the Marion Wilsons.
Yeah, and then he didn't earn it, but they gave him, because they needed a name for Vladimir Klitschko, and they gave Mercer a shot at Klitschko. I think that was in 2002, and this was on HBO, and I mean, it's what you expect. I mean, Mercer's way past his prime. Mercer did, to give him credit, though, he came in this fight at 228, so I think he took it seriously. He just didn't have enough left. But I'll tell you what, even though Vlad's so talented, we've seen a lot of people that didn't hit as hard as Mercer, knock out Klitschko. I think a prime Mercer would have had a shot against Klitschko.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to compare different levels. Klitschko got a knockdown in the first round, only the second time that Mercer had been down, the other time Holyfield. And Klitschko does look terrific. I mean, for all his reputation, because for us, Klitschko was all this hype. And for Americans, for whatever reason, we have this thing against the Klitschko brothers. Now, first of all, they kept telling us they were Russian when they aren't Russian, they're Ukrainian. But Klitschko himself just looks terrific against Mercer. He's confident. And Mercer is almost humorous in a way because Mercer knows this is not his night.
How about this, though, Chris? They're so old. The Klitschkos are so old that actually when they were born in Russia because Ukraine was part of Russia.
I guess I don't know, but Klitschko looks great. He's a terrific boxer. He hits hard. His jab is good. He looks, of course, especially good against a little bit slower, older Ray Mercer. But I did like the way Mercer handled it as a sportsman and stuff. That look, this isn't my night. And that he's willing to do that. There is something in Mercer, because he did it when he did these kickboxing stuff too, that he's willing to get his ass kicked and kind of take it in stride because he kind of wants to know what it's like. He kind of wants to know what there's a part of him that's not just money oriented, but he's just into the thrill of something of tough competition, and that was competition that was beyond him at this point.
Yeah, and you talked about the kickboxing career. After he ended his boxing career, he went to Japan and challenged Muwashi in a kickboxing combat sport K1, June 6, 2004. And he made a reasonable account of himself, Chris.
Yeah, and then the next one he fought, I forget the guy's name, but he took a kick and then said afterwards, I just got the shit kicked out of me. It's kind of funny the way Mercer says it. And again, he was taking on a champion. He was taking on a guy the second time around. The first time around, too, he was taking on already. He has no experience doing this, and he's taking on champions. He's not even taking on journeyman-type guys. And that's got to be impossible. And it seems to me it had to hurt Mercer after the first fight, the rest of his boxing career. He's taking a lot of shots to the legs with these kicks. And we know with Muhammad Ali that was not a good idea to take on these kickboxers because they're kicking your legs. Mercer, I don't think has really complained too much about it, but then he still had a boxing career at that point. I think again, part of him was just the athlete in him and the liking a challenge sort of thing, it was they're very rough battles for him to take, but I guess give the man credit for being willing to do it. And they fought when he tried the MMA, the Kimbo Slice, and that got a lot of attention. First round, it's hard to see Ray Mercer getting the shit kicked out of him in one round. It's like, oh damn, that sucks because this is Ray Mercer. This is this is a guy I really have great respect for. And what is this MMA shit? Who is this Kimbo Slice? It was kind of sad in a way, though. I don't want to. He had one more of these MMA, which I don't want to
talk
about now.
When he knocked out Tim Silva.
Yeah, that was actually after his career. After Shannon Briggs was his last. Shannon Briggs knocked out Mercer too, but now Mercer's boxing career is over. He's 48 years old. He takes him to Tim Silva, a two-time UFC heavyweight champion. With one punch, Mercer knocks him out in less than 10 seconds. So does that tell you something when you watch MMA? Of all these guys are probably hitting hard, but they ain't hitting at the hard level of their heavyweight isn't the same thing as the boxing heavyweight. He certainly isn't the same level of Ray Mercer. And Ray Mercer, whether he's knocking these real boxers out of the ring or taking on the UFC champions and knocking them out in less than 10 seconds, Ray Mercer could hit. It's really fun to see him do that, actually. I mean, I don't like to take on other people's sports. If you like MMA, that's great. And I don't hate it. I just sometimes don't like it to be compared against boxing. I'd rather say it's a different sport. Let it be a different sport. But it allowed boxing, and Ray Mercer hits himself, and that's it. Lights out.
All right, Chris. Who do we want to do next show?
Well, we've always thought about Mike Weaver. I was also thinking, do you want to try something like Vitaly Klitschko, or is that?
I don't know. That might be too recent.
You think so? All right, well, we can try Mike Weaver because we both were interested in him at least. And,
yeah, I got to interview Mike Weaver. He's a great guy, and he was a damn good boxer or damn good puncher.
Right.
Know that.
Then that's what we do. So let's just do Mike Weaver. That sounds good.
All right. So check us out on the next installment of the Old Time Boxing Show when we do Mike Weaver. Chris, you want to tell people where they can find you on the internet?
Find me on go to YouTube, Christopher Shelton Boxing, and or just on the internet, Christopher Shelton Boxing, and I should show up to see interviews and stories. And I like to go back hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years for some of these boxers. Boxing's been around long before Jesus from Nazareth was born. Boxing has been around with great champions.
All right, guys, you can follow me at Grueling Truth, and make sure tomorrow night, or recording what day you're listening to this, but Saturday night, Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder 2, me and Jeremiah Pricer will be live after the fight, somewhere between midnight Eastern time and 5 in the morning. It's according to how long they draw that crap out. So make sure you check us out on thegruelingtruth.com, or just go to Twitter at Grueling Truth. You'll be able to find a live version of the show so you can listen along. You can also call in. We'll have a call-in number where people can ask questions or make comments about the fight. So, once again, You can hear our shows anywhere you find podcasts, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. You name it, we're there. For Christopher Shelton, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.